That was sort of a moonlighting assignment for me. I was assigned to be co-chair with an Army four-star general of a working group that was to assess the risk of repeal of that law on what we call military effectiveness. In 2010, our president pledged to work with the Congress to repeal that law. He had pledged during the campaign to repeal the law. Don't ask, don't tell was a bit of a misnomer, because even now, we don't ask, and the military is not required to tell their sexual orientation. What the law required, which was the controversial aspect of it, is if there is a finding that a service member has engaged in quote unquote homosexual conduct, that service member must be separated by the US military. And quote unquote homosexual conduct could include a statement, I am gay. So if a service member, either directly or indirectly, very assertively or offhandedly said, I'm gay, or made a reference to his gay partner, that person could be kicked out of the military. It's a very controversial law. It was on the books for 17 years. And President Obama pledged to repeal it in collaboration with the military. And so our Secretary of Defense, my client, Robert Gates, appointed a working group headed by Army General Carter Ham and myself to do this 10-month study to assess the risk of repeal. And he told us to systematically engage the force. So we surveyed 400,000 service members, 150,000 spouses of service members. We solicited 72,000 emails. We went out across the world, across the US, to 95 different military installations, talked to service members, 200 or 300 at a time, to ask them about the impact of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And we've basically found three things that were a reality in 2010, unlike 1993 when the law was first passed. One, most service members, 69%, had already had the experience of serving with somebody that they believed was gay in their unit. And the overwhelming majority of those said it was not a problem. That was number one. Number two, we recognized in these large group discussions we were having that a lot of the negative reaction to repealing that law, aside from the moral and religious objections to homosexuality, was based on stereotype. A lot of service members had a misperception about what it would be like to serve with a gay or lesbian service member who was allowed to be open about their sexual orientation. And even the word open conjured up a negative image for people somehow. And so we recognized that there was this misperception about what it would be like to serve in a working environment with someone who was allowed to be open about their sexual orientation. And we were willing to take that stereotype head on. And then last but not least, we got the survey results back, which were a bit of a surprise to a number of us, which indicated that something like 70% of the US military either saw a positive effect if the law were repealed, or mixed positive negative effects, or no effects at all if the law were repealed. And that was sort of the headline of the survey part of the report, that 70% of the US military really doesn't see a problem with repealing this law. Our report went public almost exactly 2 years ago, November 29th, 2010, right in the middle of a lame duck session of Congress. Does everybody here know what a lame duck session of Congress is? A lame duck session, we're in one right now. A lame duck session of Congress is after the election, but before the new Congress is sworn in. And more and more stuff happens in a lame duck session of Congress. And so our report went public on November 29th, 2010, and Congress repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell probably about 2 or 3 weeks later. We got 65 votes in the Senate and a pretty substantial majority in the House for doing that. The law was repealed about 9 months later, and repeal has actually gone better than General Ham and I predicted. We predicted that the risk of repeal would be low, provided that the military was educated and trained, and it has gone far smoother than we had predicted. And that actually was consistent with the experience that we saw with other militaries who had reformed their practices, like the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Germany. And it sort of demonstrated something that I think is true generally about human behavior, which is that the reality of the ability to grasp social change, and this is what this was to a large extent, goes far smoother than predictions about what change is going to be like. Same was true of racial integration in our US military in the 40s and 50s. Same was true of gender integration in our US military. The predictions very often are far worse than the reality once you grasp it and take it on. And that's what's been happening here. And I think that it's gone remarkably well as a result of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Many of our colleges and universities in the country are inviting the military back onto their campuses to recruit. Something that was really striking for me. I was at Stanford Law School in October to give a talk much like this one. And when I drove on the campus, the first thing I saw was a Navy ROTC unit, all in dress whites, on the campus of Stanford, which had not been there for years. So it's been remarkable, and it's gone incredibly well.